One.
Well, the world has still gone nutty, buddy, even downright cruddy, buddy. Wish I missed the past, buddy, but there's still Buddycast. No, don't be naughty, go meet a buddy here on Buddycast.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the founder and host of Buddycast, Nick Sorensen.
Welcome to another episode of everybody's favorite show, Buddycast. I'm your host, Nick Sorensen. Joining me today is a very special buddy. If you've ever seen this show, Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, you know all about it. You know everything. You know, we all love Mr. Rogers because it's a beautiful day in the neighborhood. But let me introduce you to my new buddy, Paul. How you doing, Paul?
I'm doing fine. The camera just shook because my cat just nudged the laptop. So she's prowling around. You'll see me behind in a minute. Nice to be here. And it's a pleasure to visit with you for a while.
Mm-hmm. I got to ask, what type of cat?
What's that? What's with it?
I got to ask, what type of cat?
Where is she? Here she is. This is Chloe. She won't be here long. She's a very shy cat, but there she is. She's my office mate here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Awesome. So, Paul, you've had a long-standing career in television. What sparked your interest?
What spiked my interest? What got me going, did you say?
Yep.
Yeah. When I was in the Army during the Vietnam era, actually, I used to listen to Barbra Streisand records when I was in my tent. And I used to imagine music videos in my head. This is before we had music videos, okay? So, And when I got out of the service, alive and well, I got in the GI Bill, went to college, University of Maryland, and I majored in radio, television, and film. I just decided, I just really liked it, and I stayed at it. I've been in public television. I was in public television about 10 years as a young producer in Washington, D.C., and then one day I answered an ad in Broadcasting Magazine that said, wanted television director for children's television program. That's all it said. I sent in my credentials. I had 10 years under my belt by then. And lo and behold, it was Family Communications in Pittsburgh, Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. And cut to the chase, I got hired about 2 weeks later. And that was my huge break. So I was a writer and director there for 10 years and became very close friends with Fred Rogers. So
that's awesome. And that answered my next question. How'd you get involved with WQED and Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood? So.
Well, that was with Mr. Rogers. And that's, I just kind of segued into that for you. But that's what prompted me. I had 10 years in, then 10 years with Fred. And I learned an awful lot about how important it is to look into the camera lens and say there's no one in the world exactly like you, and people can like you just the way you are. It's a very powerful medium of television, and Fred was a real firm believer in kids, and he didn't invent. He and worked with a child psychiatrist and psychologist, Dr. Margaret McFarland, and she was like the hidden side of Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. She understood the scholarly side of it, and for early childhood. And our prime audience was preschoolers, 3 to 5 years old, believe it or not. Although we had a huge audience beyond that, but that was our primary audience. So that everything you ever saw in Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, what you saw up front was the interesting stuff, but underneath it was very, really strict kind of applications of childhood, of child psychiatry and early childhood development. Is what the word I'm struggling for. So as a writer, I had to follow all those kind of rules. It's not just inventing something that kids would like. Hardly. because Fred, you could stop me anywhere. I just go on
No,
about
keep
this.
going,
But
keep
Fred,
going.
Fred believed that what you and I are grown-ups, and
Mhm.
grown-ups think, well, kids have fun and that's playing and grown-up serious. It's just the opposite. The work of childhood is work. The play, we as adults, okay, you do a
Mhm.
lot of heavy lifting when you're a kid, trying to figure out how the hell the world works. Okay, and most adults don't think that, and it makes sense. This little kid running around. But man, you and I we didn't get born like this. We
Mhm.
got born as little teeny kids. We had to like figure out the world. So Fred Rogers devoted his life to helping children figure out how the world works and to be deadly serious about it. You know, you and I could look at it. We take a shower. We look at the drain and keep soaping up. A 4-year-old child looks at the drain and says, the water's going down there. What the hell? Am I going to go down there too? So
Mhm.
if I would write a song, you can never go down the drain. Okay. So this is, you can see where this is going. You can take
Mhm.
this anywhere you want with toilets, with birds singing. It doesn't matter. The work of childhood is deadly serious. And Fred was deadly serious, but it takes grown-ups to talk about it, like me writing a script, like Fred, like the camera operators, that the labor of adults helping children understand how the world ticks was
Mhm.
really a lot of fun. So we did that for 10 years, and that was my just a huge opportunity. So
Mhm.
I'll go on and on. So about this stuff,
Yeah,
I'll,
go ahead.
I'll
Go
put
ahead.
the brakes on. But
Yeah.
yeah,
One question I had for you is, do you remember your first time meeting Fred? Do you
yeah.
remember your first encounter with him? What was that like?
Oh
Tell
my
us about that.
God. Oh my God. Yeah, I drove. I didn't even know where Western Pennsylvania was. I lived in Washington D.C. at the time,
Mhm.
and I took the job, and and I had to figure out I got to drive to Western Pennsylvania. I had no idea it was way the hell out the end of the state of Pennsylvania because I flew out there. What the hell did I know? So when I left uh, Washington D.C., my wife, late wife at the time, Connie, was selling the house and getting ready to go and stuff. So I drove. I don't know what it took, like 8 hours or something. Jeez, I said, man, I'm never going to get there. I finally get there. It's about 11 o'clock in the morning in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I go in. I meet Fred again and say, it's been a long time. Look forward to working with you. It's going to be terrific. He said, hey, uh, it's almost noontime. You want to go for a swim? And I said, I'm like, my brains are fried at that time. I said,
Mhm.
hell, why not? I used to be a lifeguard. I know how to swim and that kind of thing. So I get in the car with Fred. Fred drives me to the Pittsburgh Athletic Club, which was this very, it's no longer even, I don't think it's even there anymore, but it was all male. Of course, back then, the gentleman, this is the cat's joining in here. The Chloe says she wants to eat dinner.
Mhm.
Uh, all male. Okay, so there's no women around. This is how things were. And so we go down the locker room, and I think I have swim trunks or something. I'm in the locker room. I notice everybody's changing over these gentlemen. Da, 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 da. And then I notice, and this kicked me back to my YMCA days as a kid, that the gentlemen are not wearing bathing suits. The gentlemen are in the nude. Okay, this is very Greek kind of thing. So,
Mhm.
and including Mr. Rogers, and including me, in the nude. So I'm like looking straight above, and I'm trying to cope with this socio-economic kind of thing. We go into the swimming pool, and Fred dives in. I'm just looking like from the chest up. It's too much for my brains. And Fred dives in, and I'm standing there saying, well, this is sort of a metaphor for my life because I'm about to like dive into a new world. I'm not going to stitch your clothing on. So, and I dive in and I start swimming. So that was, I met Fred in the buff, but
Mhm.
he swam every day like clockwork, very routinized man. And that was the secret to his success, was very disciplined guy. And he would weigh himself every morning And he would always weigh he weighed the same his whole life, like I don't know what it was, 100 whatever, 42 pounds or something. He wasn't. He was almost, I think, 6 foot. I'm 6'4", and Fred was, I think, about 6 foot, I think. But that's how I met Fred. My first day of work. I met him in a job interview earlier, but that's swimming in the naked with Fred Rogers. God bless him.
Who
I
else can
still
say
don't
that
know
type
what
of
it was
story?
like from his chest down, so I don't know.
Yeah.
What?
Who else can say that type of story, you know?
Yeah. I mean, it's very emblematic of Fred, completely
Mhm.
relaxed. And obviously learned a lot from Fred. And one thing was certainly is he was always completely interested in human beings. He's just fascinated by them, no matter who they were. And he was able to make you feel comfortable in your own skin. He was able to make you feel that you were enough. He
Mhm.
was just enchanted with you, and that's just how he was. It's just a great
Mhm.
gift. So
Exactly. So he was who he was both on and off the screen. It wasn't like this, the minute the
exactly,
camera yells cut,
yeah,
he's someone
no,
else or anything like
he's the
that.
real deal. The only
Yeah.
difference would be he would talk just as slowly and just deliberately to you and I, but obviously his diction and his word choices would be more elevated. But it was always just measured, kind of. It's just who he was, and
Mhm.
I find that a lot of guys who kind of these burly guys, I tend to become the interlocutor for Fred because they said, they would look at Fred and think he's kind of not effeminate or delicate or something like, just too gentle. But they knew their kids loved Fred. Okay,
Mhm.
that's important. So I spent a lot of time saying, look, Fred's a real deal. He's a grandfather, got kids, got two, blah blah blah. I would interpret his maleness, and I was sort of this guy been in the army. I was a sergeant. Yeah, I was sort of the in between guy, and I helped them understand. Um, so okay, I'm back. Are you? I'm
Yep.
there. Okay. So
Yep.
thank you, Starlink. I'm on Starlink incidentally, so which is pretty good. But uh,
Mhm.
and that was good for me. It helped a lot of young fathers let their kids watch Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood and not feel uncomfortable about it. So
Mhm. So I gotta ask, I know this is like picking your favorite child, but what were some of your favorite episodes from Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood?
um, well, I wrote some episodes, so I'd be foolish not to say that I like the ones that I wrote, because
Mhm.
I was a writer. I had to figure that out, and uh, I think, well, certainly one of his, and I didn't direct this. Some of these, they were. Listen, I came in with Fred when he was like on the world stage. Okay, he'd been
Mhm.
on there for 15 years or so, and he was like Mount Rushmore by then. But like I mentioned earlier, you can never go down the drain kind of song. That his early episodes, uh, I think that certainly. Well, let me try to think. Music with one with Yo-Yo Ma, very world-renowned cellist that I was directed, but it was Fred's. He got a degree in music from Rollins College in
Mhm.
Florida, so he was a musician. He wrote music and lyrics, and we did a segment with Yo-Yo Ma, who came into the studio into Mr. Rogers. What we had, Handyman Negri's or Joe Negri's music store. That was his. We had Neighborhood of Make Believe where he was Handyman Negri who fixed things. But
Mhm.
in the other side of Fred, when his neighborhood, he had a music show because Joe Negri is a very accomplished jazz guitarist, still around. He's almost pushing 90 now, doing his thing. But so Wynton, or not, I'm confusing with Wynton Marsalis, favorite famous trumpeter. But Yo-Yo came in and he was in, and Fred did a scene with him in the shop, and Yo-Yo's playing the Bach thing.
Mhm.
It's a Bach. piece of buck. So when we were done taping it, I was out just visiting with Yo-Yo, and I was admiring his cello, which is it's a Guarneri cello, and it's worth about maybe $2.5–3 million.
Wow.
$2.5–3 million. Okay, and this was made in the 1700s. So, and I'm talking with Yo-Yo, and I'm admiring. He said, Yo-Yo said, pick it up. I said, oh, sure. So I pick it up by the neck. He said, now, when you do it, be careful. I said, of course I'll be careful. He said, no. He said, you'll be surprised when you lift it up. And I lifted it up, and my hand it went up about twice as far as I thought it would. It would be like you see a 5-pound bag of sugar, and there's nothing in it but air. Okay, so you pick it up by mistake. It was so light, and his eyes lit up. I said, what's the deal? And he said that Guarneri knew how much wood to cut away before it stopped being a cello. So he could thin down, so that the tension of that cello, everything in tension, the neck, the strings, the bridge, it's like a controlled explosion waiting to go off. So, and I remember that very vividly with that episode, and how happy Fred was. And I directed it, and I have 2 cameras, and I have the 2 shot of Fred and Yo-Yo, but then I had some shots of Yo-Yo and the frets and all that, but I had some shots of Fred listening. And you can watch it online now. If you do Yo-Yo by Mr. Rogers, you can see the shots I took of Fred listening. And sometimes it's a 2 shot, but just the intense regard that he's giving Yo-Yo's mastery. It's beautiful to see it. And you can't help but almost feel the same way. So that's one of my very favorite episodes was with Yo-Yo Ma. Great guy.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Another question that just brewed in my mind. What was the writing process like when you were writing an episode of Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood?
Yeah. Well, the secret to Fred's success, and I mentioned her name earlier, was Dr. Margaret McFarland. She was of the same caliber as Benjamin Spock and kids and stuff that Margaret he consulted with her. So they would decide, what would the topic would be. Margaret would say, well, it needs to be this. Then Fred would figure out a way to make it on television and then make it make-believe and layer it over so the kid didn't wise up to what we were doing. But underneath it was the architecture. So to write a Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood script, you had to have a very firm foundation that nobody knew about, that you built upon it, neighbor, to make believe you did this, you did that, you did that. But underneath is this very strong structure of objectives. I did a series on, believe it or not, economics for children. So I remember I would consult with Margaret, with McFarland. She would talk more general terms and stuff. And she said, so we talked about supply and demand. Okay, you and I know what supply and demand is economically, right? I have it. She said, if you think about supply, she had a very tiny voice like this. She talked like this. She's just a hilarious woman. So supply and demand, if you consider the child, it's like toilet training. The child has it and the parent wants it. Okay. So I went, oh my God, that's right. Toilet training, not poop your pants, you have it, I want it. So supply, demand. So I had to do what Fred would do. Okay. I had to take that concept and think supply and demand, water retention, holding, going to the bathroom and that kind of thing. And then I thought about liquid. And then I thought about what if in the neighborhood of make-believe, they wanted to build a swimming pool. What if they wanted to build a swimming pool? And but as they dig it, and they dig a swimming pool, they get enough money to dig it, but it springs a leak. Now, springing a leak, wetting your pants, okay? You You layer this down. So it springs a leak. What are they going to do? So who builds the swimming pool? Well, I had a character named Beaver, a beaver, because beavers build dams.
Mhm.
So I built a script. So you do the Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood in the house, what we called it, his interior, where he walks in, he's wearing a tie, and he's Mr. Rogers. Then Neighborhood of Make Believe is the kind of the dream state. So I worked in the neighborhood. I did the Neighborhood of Make Believe. They dig a hole. They spring a leak. They don't have enough money. They have to borrow from Southland. They fix it, but they don't have enough money. They have enough money to fix the pipes, but not to build a swimming pool. But everybody works together, and it all, so I took all that from a kid wetting his or her pants, with her toilet training.
Mhm.
Now, take that thought. I'm almost done. That's Neighborhood Make Believe. Water control, retention, and money, that kind of thing. Back in the Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood side, before the fantasy, we did a segment on how people make money. We shot a location shoot at the National Mint in Washington, D.C. We did, I think, what else? We did a bunch of other things. But Fred did, remember what else we did in that side to set up the economic side of it. Oh, yes. If you watch Neighborhood, he walk in his house, go over to the kitchen, and then out to the side, out back. Okay. Now, when he went into out back, we had up a sand table, and in it was sand. And Fred builds this little volcano and fills it up with water, just talking about it. And then it springs a leak, and he shoves up the sand to keep the leak from coming out. So you follow this. He's controlling the liquid. Right?
Mhm.
So a 4-year-old is, man, this is like, but it's deep down, we're showing them that it's possible to control your bodily functions. Okay. Just like supply and demand. So there's a very intricate, interwoven psychology and sensitivity to the challenge of childhood is trying to make sense of the world around you. And Fred did a great job of it. And for me to have to be what we call writing Fredish, that
Mhm.
I had to be like Fred. But, you can say that I channeled it. Yeah, well, I had to. And that's the tail of my cat here. So you can see. That's Chloe. She can't deal with the fact that I'm on the air. So there she is. So that's kind of a long answer, but that's the challenge of writing. And people didn't need to know this. The fact that you and I are talking about it, I'm just
Mhm.
explaining the architecture of Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood and why so many people, including you, I'm sure, were affected at an early age. Plus, and not only at that primary age, we flew one time to California to film out there and on a regular commercial flight. And in the middle of the flight, somewhere over God knows where, Missouri, the whole front end of this airplane was I think it was UCLA swim team. Okay. All these big lunky guys come back and they found out Fred was on the airplane. So I'm back there, somewhere halfway in the back. And they come on, it's a Mr. Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood. Blah, blah. These big kids, singing to Fred. So, and it was really true that we had a huge college age people would watch the show. Not only did it remind them when they were little, but also, and here's very important, that the power of the neighborhood was very calming, And Fred would look in the camera, this little, that little camera. And when he would say, there's no one in the world exactly like you, and people can like you just the way you are, that's a powerful use of the medium that you and I are using right now. So much so that it can be riveting. They did a test with children. These were, 5, 6, 7-year-old kids that would respond. Here's what they responded to. Commercials, number one, because adults were telling them something, they were listening. to news shows because the newscaster would look in the lens, and Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. The power of what we call subjective camera is just astonishing. You can look through the glass, and it's one thing to look through the glass, but to be able to have that connection that Fred would. And we had, he had teleprompters in the what we call the interiors. When he was dressed up and being Mr. Rogers, every word was important. They didn't want to mess with it. But he was such a good writer that you didn't know he was just talking. You sound like he was just talking, but he wasn't. Every word was on a teleprompter, and he's looking through the lens because it was a mirrored teleprompter lens, and it worked. Now Neighborhood of Make Believe was the fourth wall was up. They almost never looked at didn't look at the camera. It was this way, people talking and this kind of thing. None of this down the tunnel kind of stuff. But when Fred did it, it worked. And these are they're devices, and they can be used for good or ill. And in Fred's case, it was used for good. So, and I'm glad that I was able, as a director, to recognize that I wasn't ignorant of the power of that, so that when I directed, I just used 2 cameras, and that in essence, a 5-year-old child, I was teaching them film grammar. You have a wide shot, a 2 shot, an over the shoulder shot, a close up, a back and forth over the shoulder, and a film grammar. You and I take it for granted because we're used to it. But when you're, a child would go, if it's a wide shot, then a close up, the child would say, "What the hell happened? Where am I now?" Okay, it's that simple. So I would walk it in, and I'm watching my video feed. I don't know if it's screwy or not. Is this coming through okay or not? Can you tell?
A little glitchy, but we're okay. We keep going. You're good.
Yeah, it should be. Well, it's all Elon Musk's fault. I have Starlink, which is pretty damn good. So it's a very fast upload. Yeah, it's very good. I live in I'm out in the boondocks here in Arizona on a little ranch. So, and I'm very grateful to have Starlink because it allows me to have an internet connection that's very fast.
Nice. I think you're back now. I think we're good now.
Okay, good. So,
so
done.
Now
Talk some more. What's up?
Yeah, go ahead. I gotta ask, what are your thoughts on the theme song?
On the theme song? What? Your theme song? What?
No, the Mr. Rogers theme song.
Oh yeah,
Won't You Be My Neighbor?
What are my thoughts about it? It's a beautiful day. You mean the well, it's pretty self-evident, isn't it? I think what's more important for me when I think about it is the orchestration that's beneath it, thanks to Johnny Costa, who was the music director for the show. Johnny was just instrumental. And Fred could write the melody, but I don't know how musically inclined you are, but it ain't much if you don't got the arranger. And Johnny Costa was a great arranger. So, yeah, I think his lyrics are pretty straightforward and reinforcing. So, and it's a beautiful neighborhood. It's just it's powerful stuff. I think Tom Hanks, incidentally, did a terrific job. I was cringing. I did said, "Oh my God, I don't want to watch this," but because I was around there when that storyline happened with the Esquire writer, and I remember this guy, and I remember how, we had a lot of people coming, going, "Oh, well, here we go again, a kids show," and every one of them, Fred would turn on a dime. They would go in as sort of a kiddie show. They come out as true believers in the neighborhood because Fred was able to reach out to them and make them feel they were doing a lot more than what they thought they were doing. And Hanks especially. And here's what he did the best, which sold me within 5 minutes. That Hanks figured out two things. One, it's not about Fred Rogers. It's the storyline is this guy's, that's the arc, is him not believing Fred and then believing. That's that. Fred is he's a supporting character. Okay, Mr. Rogers is. And so Hanks, I don't know how he figured it out, but he understood that the key to Hanks is a very active bop. When he's just a regular person, he's like Mr. Extrovert kaboom, He understood that there was a stillness to Rogers. And Fred could play you like Yo-Yo Ma could play a cello with being quiet. He'd wait you out, and not in a manipulative way. He was just, and I'll give you a good example. When we did a remote, about 2 years later with Yo-Yo Ma again, at his house. I think he lived in New York or something. We would shoot our location things before we did everything else. So that was already in the can and edited. So Fred and I talked. We did the interior segment where he comes back in. Wasn't that fun, visiting with Yo-Yo Ma, blah, 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 that segment. So he and I talked. He said, here's the deal. Johnny Costa can't stand when I'm quiet. He's going to go crazy. I'm going to come in and I'm going to bet you that I'm going to be able to be quiet for maybe 6 seconds before Costa goes crazy. I said, okay, what do you want to bet? I said, $10. Okay, $10. I said, I'll bet Costa can handle it because it's just, he said, you'll see. So we roll tape, roll and record, ready to cue Fred, and Johnny plays his little transition music, and the kids in the finished show, they've just seen, but we're doing just a segment. Fred comes through the door, sits down, says, wasn't that wonderful? Listening to that kind of music. Sometimes I just want to sit and let's think about how wonderful that sounded. So he sits there. And I have Bobby Vaughn, whose camera 2 starts just creeping in like this. And I'm counting in my head, and I know Fred's counting in his head. And sure enough, ring-da-da-ding, about 6 seconds in, Costa goes crazy. He can't stand it. He starts going, da-da-da-da, and Fred's face goes, and on and on and on. So I lost the bet. I lost $10. And Costa went crazy. He couldn't take it. He could not take the silence.
Oh,
Fred could play it. So
awesome. Well, buddy. Yep. Well, buddy, I gotta play a quick ad from our sponsors, so don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
You know it.
Tonight's Buddycast has been brought to you by a Compassionate Heart Massage Therapy. Heather and her 6 other massage therapists are well trained and can perform any type of service, from deep tissue to relaxation to even showing you how to perform a massage on your canine friend. Heather is a good buddy of mine. She's been on Buddycast before, so you can check out that episode and see all the services that she has to offer, or you can learn more by visiting compassionateheart.com. That's compassionateheart, HART.com, or by giving her a call at 814-456-5853. Tell my buddy Heather that Buddy sent you. Now go be someone's buddy. That was a word from our sponsors, Compassionate Heart Massage Therapy.
You did a good job.
Thank you.
You did a good job. Yeah.
Thank you.
So anyhow, so that's silence, and now we're talking again. But yeah.
So you and me have some possible mutual buddies here. On the same show have been David Newell and Francois Clemens. Do you have any stories with those guys?
With David especially. Well, David was Speedy Delivery, and that was David's. He started as a young man. He grew into the role, so he just was running around. So you might remember Purple Panda was a character on the show. And there would be, and we had a person who would get into that suit in the studio and do Purple Panda characters. But there would also be, over a course of a year, you'd have public appearances, and David would go out as Speedy Delivery, and Purple Panda would go out, and you'd always have to, somebody have to climb in the suit and be Purple Panda. It's like a mascot, you got to get in the damn suit, know who is Big Head. So, and David told me the story one time, and it was just, it's so David Newell. He could tell a story like Yo-Yo Ma could play a cello. So David is in this Thanksgiving Day parade somewhere in Pennsylvania, Western Pennsylvania, and he's on the float, and so is Purple Panda. They're waving and stuff, Da, 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 da. Then there's this luncheon at the end of the parade. It's a morning parade. There's a luncheon, and they're in this auditorium or some kind, maybe it's a hotel, but anyhow, the heat, if somebody's turned up the heat, okay, it is like stifling hot in this place. And it's November. Normally you'd expect it to be kind of cool, but David was telling me the story that it was like it was incredibly warm in this banquet hall, and all these people are gathered in a kind of celebratory, and the mayor of whatever town this was is introducing everybody and saying, and before we begin, we want to have an invocation from the Reverend so and so and so. Okay, so the minister comes up and starts to just say grace before this meal, and David's saying everybody's bowing their head, including, he said, Purple Panda sitting next to him. This big stuff, Purple Panda's bending down. The prayer's done. Everybody sits up, kind of gets started. David looks to his right. There's Purple Panda, not moving. And his wife, Nan Newell, it was inside. He had convinced her to be Purple Panda. She said, I don't want to be that damn stuffed thing, please. She had fainted because it was so hot. So he kind of revives her, and Purple Panda's head comes up, and a little bit of the space, and then he kind of, can you imagine Purple Panda sitting at a table? How does a big giant mascot eat dinner? I don't think so, but anyhow, that's one of David's many stories, and very accomplished storyteller. And he was a public relations director for the neighborhood in his real life, so as you will know. So, and we were dear friends, and he was well, like anybody who works with the neighborhood, is a very small staff, maybe 10 or 12 people that we represented, Mr. Rogers' neighborhood. So, it was we weren't a bunch of little Tibetan monks walking around, being disciples to Saint Fred, but we did understand the value and importance of childhood, and that, we liked doing it, and we got paid to do it. So, and pretty good money for the time, So I was very happy to do it. I have two daughters, Gabriel and Sarah, who are now moms of their own. They have children, but they grew up with the neighborhood. We'd have Thanksgiving dinner at Fred's, and the girls would show up, and it was just fun. So he was a real deal. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
And like I said, we also had Francois Clemens on the show.
Yeah, Francois. Yeah, great voice. He certainly was one of many people who supported Fred's love of music with operas. So, and Francois was, and he, and real, the Mr. Rogers side, he was the Officer Clemens, and then in the neighborhood of Make Believe, I think he was also Officer Clemens, but. And Francois was an accomplished, I think it was a tenor, operatic tenor. So, yeah. And Fred had a great knack of, television itself, television productions, film, anything in motion pictures. It's a huge collaborative event. Can you imagine? It's not like I write novels as well. Okay, so that's my sidebar. It's just me. That's it. I've got 12 novels under my belt. It's just me. But television production, I'm with Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, and also with Ciao Italia, the Italian cooking show. you deal with 25, 30 people at a clip, and that's a collaborative event. You and I are collaborating right now with this, but it takes two to tango, takes 25 to make television, takes 125 to do a film. If you ever watch close credits in a film, give me a break. One of the I wanted to mention, just thinking about Jan Pascal, who was a set dresser when we were there. Jan went out to Hollywood, I don't know, 20 years ago. 2 years ago, she won an Oscar for
Ooh.
one of the movies. She was set decoration, production design. So the caliber of people who were involved with the neighborhood, just it's been great to see and very satisfying to see them continue their careers and also to help younger people come up. So it's what we do. So, yeah.
The one thing I absolutely loved about Dr. Clemens was, you mentioned it earlier, when Fred took an issue like, okay, how do we take economics and explain it to a child? How do we take racism and all that and explain it to a child? Like, how do we take inclusion and explain it to a child? Well, let's invite our friend over for a pool party. It's a hot day today. Let's invite him over. We don't care which friend it is. Let's invite him over. It's a hot day. Come on in. And that's how you include people. Like, that's the lesson of inclusion. Like, that's the lesson. Yeah. That's how you take something as big as racism and break it down.
Well, you learn, whether good or bad, what you learn in childhood, you learn, And if your parents are bigoted, or if they're, have racial prejudice, you're going to learn it. Children don't. It's too simple. It's simplistic. Waiting for this Starlink to settle down. Yeah, it's too, and Fred would do that. Very, and this is true. Ernest Hemingway wrote that human beings have a built-in shock-proof bullshit alarm. Okay? My picture froze. Jesus Christ. Okay, I'm back. I'm back. I'll have to write Elon Musk and say, "What's going on, Elon? Come on." So,
I know.
I don't know if you heard that thing. Did you hear that quote from Hemingway or not? Did you hear that?
I heard the beginning of it.
Yeah. He said human beings have a built-in shock-proof bullshit alarm. Okay. So the needle goes off instantly. Children especially have a very sensitive bullshit alarm. Okay. So here's one thing they don't like. Set it off. You go, if I talk to you like this, aren't you happy to be here? You hear that? The sing song.
Yeah.
It's a bullshit alarm. Okay. Now, adults, we make this, we're so stupid. We forget, I don't wake up in the morning and say, I remember when I was a kid. Nah. I look in the mirror. I'm the same person I've been my whole life. And this is, you have to accept that truth in a child, number one. Two, that kid is working his or her ass off to figure out how the world works. So if you can look at them and even though they're little, give them grave regard. I used to do it with my kids. I would kneel down. You ever watch Fred? He's always on his knees. That he would get down. Can you imagine? You're looking down on a child. This is ridiculous. I would get down eye to eye with my kids. I said, here's the difference between you and me. I'm 6'4", and I would stand up and say, look how tall I am. Then I'd come back down to them. I said, 2, I have a wallet. In my wallet, I have money. I can buy candy anytime I want. I can drive a car. Okay. You can't, but that's it. Other than that, you and me, we're just we're the same thing. Meaning, here's what, I don't care if they understood, but I knew their bullshit alarm wasn't going off. I knew that because it was the truth. So that much I gave to my kids, and and that's what Fred would do every time he looked in the lens. When he said there's no one in the world exactly like you, people can like you just the way you are. He was talking to the child. He was talking to you and me. He was talking to anybody because we are all equal. Okay, We're all coming out of the same thing, you know. You're you and I'm me, but we're also us. Okay, that's very important. That we are a collective species, and that I think somebody wrote that human beings are shy mammals. You know, they should be reproducing, and that's about it. You know, we're shy mammals. You know, instead of the posturing, the this, the that, blah blah blah. So it's been
Wonderful.
fun. You know, it's and I'm not, you know, I'm not 25 years old, so I can speak with some authority. And I'm also, as an older man, I can give my blessing to younger people. So, which is kind of very biblical kind of thing. You know, I bless you, but I'm affirming as an adult that the world actually does work. Contrary to the world works, but you've got to work. You got, you know, but it does work. And one of my quotes is Fred is that, and I mentioned to you earlier, that people want to love and be loved, and everything else is commentary. Okay, a lot of commentary, a lot of chit chat, a lot of this, a lot of that. Biden into Ukraine, cats in my lap, all this kind of stuff. Life. Okay, this is, you know, but it's commentary that people want to love and be loved, and if you can get that, that's the baseline. And the children especially, you know, need to be, once they're loved and they're capable of being loved, then they can love themselves. It's not spontaneous. They have to feel it. It's the cart before the horse, and I've learned that you got to do that first. So that's you know, the obligation I feel to any, well, actually not to any kid, but any human being.
You're exactly right.
Out of me, they get love first. Yeah, I'll do it. What the fuck? Hey, I'm 6'4". You know, I'm happy. What are they gonna say? No. I'm a nice guy, you know, but I use that as a very, you know, a happy tool. And Fred did it with children, and I do it with adults, and do it with you. It's just it works for me. And guess what? I feel good about it, you know. So
bingo. So we've been talking all about like lessons that we've learned, you know, whether they be like racism, economics. What's the greatest lesson that you've taken away from Fred?
What's the what from Fred? The what? The what?
The greatest lesson you've taken away from him?
Well, certainly what I just said. People want to love and be loved. But the lesson I've taken from him is that that I have an obligation to do so. That I have to choose that. I have to choose. It's my choice, you know. And every day, and in different ways, I'm presented with opportunities not to do that. And that sometimes I'll be okay, sometimes I'll fail, but that I come back to my baseline of what I just said. But what Fred taught me was that you're not going to have days when that works for you. But your baseline is that is what, you know, just that because I'm not alone in the human race, somebody else might be nice to me or whatever. But that what I just said about people want to love and be loved, but I have to choose to do that. And I have to guard my thinking, and Fred guarded his, was great. He was a incredibly disciplined human being, spiritually, emotionally, and psychologically, very disciplined, because he knew the importance of trying to, you know, of staying the course, if you will, which he did up until the day he died, you know. And he had a not what I would call a very comfortable passing. You know, he had stomach cancer and that kind of thing. It was just tough. And but I could always sense in him an obligation to represent himself as a fellow human being in the human race, and to model by action rather than by words, of which I've done a lot of words tonight, but actions are everything. So if you came over here and visited me tomorrow here in Winslow, Arizona, I'd still be this same guy. Okay, I wouldn't be on video, but I'd go, well, you got this guy's like the same guy he was when I was talking to him And that's the gift we can offer each other, is the honesty of being a human being. And this is tricky. You have to trust that the other human being is a human being like you are. It's not. We live in a world where we're presented with alternates and with, winners and losers, etc. But so we have to choose our thoughts. Yeah? So Fred taught me that, and I do it tonight. I'll do it tomorrow morning when I'm shaving. I'm just looking at myself in the mirror, but I'll do my best. And then the next day, and the next day, next day. So that's just,
So if Fred were here today, what would you have to say to him? Like if Fred all of a sudden popped up on Buddycast, what would you say to him?
I would say, Fred, what I learned from you, I'm still practicing it, and that I'm wondering if where you are now, this is kind of a sidebar joke, I wonder if you're not colorblind up there wherever you are, because he was. Fred could not. He was completely colorblind, but he couldn't tell certain colors.
Really?
So yeah. So when he would come in and take off his coat and put on a sweater, it was always a sweater to the left, to the right of the empty hanger, because he couldn't tell color. Okay. He wasn't pure black and white. I remember one night we used to visit Children's Hospital, he and I, at nighttime. He would drive over there, and one night he's driving back in the rainstorm. And he's driving in his big Buick, and I'm sitting there. And he said, "Tell me what's the color of that stoplight up there?" And I knew he was colorblind, but I forgot what it's like to be in a car with someone who's colorblind who doesn't know what the hell the damn stoplight. I said, "Fred, it's red." Okay, he said, "Thanks." It comes to a stop. I said, "Would you mind if I drove the rest of the way home?" He said, "Oh, no, it'll be fine." So we get out. We exchanged, and I drove. But Fred was colorblind, so I'm hoping wherever he is that he can see all the colors of a rainbow now that he couldn't when he was here.
Now, this question just popped into my head, and I know you mentioned he battled stomach cancer. Do you remember where you were the day you learned of his passing? Do you remember what was going on that day, that moment?
Yeah, I was in New Hampshire. I'd been there. Well, I left the neighborhood in the 90s, and it was like the mid 90s and stuff. And I think, I talked to him about maybe 3 weeks earlier. So we would talk fairly frequently. He talked a lot to his friends on the phone. And I was in my office in my house. I had a home office. And he was very secretive about, and I don't think he knew. Yeah, I didn't know. Nobody knew in the company. I think 2 people that he was going through this, because for a variety of reasons. Obviously, when you're the linchpin, you're not gonna, you can't do it. And I just, I wasn't. And here's what: I wasn't sad or anything, because Fred and I were very close. We're both very spiritual, and he was a huge, he's an ordained Presbyterian minister, very close relationship with his idea of a power greater than himself. And I am too. And I didn't feel, I didn't miss him, to be honest, because he still is Fred. He transitioned where he's at. And I think that's what I remember thinking that, saying that I just felt closer to him in that moment. I guess it's the way. I've never had anybody ask me that question, so I'm trying to find a way to respond to you. But I felt close to him. Yeah.
And I love the positivity of it. It came to my mind. I'm like, I wonder, because you ask people, how if you ask someone like, where were you during this?
Sure.
Absolutely. Where were you during this historic event?
We have these place markers in our lives, whether it's whatever. Yeah. Where were you when? Where were you when? And we mark them. And it's interesting that I don't have a real firm moment because I didn't feel any change in our relationship.
Mm-hmm.
That's weird, but it's true.
It
Even
is.
right now, I don't feel that any different. That
Mhm.
I was on board with that guy. When I said, yeah, I'll do it. I remember when he came out of the office, he and I, nobody else knew, but he said, he didn't say, I think, he said, we have our new director. I remember he said that. This is long before we closed the deal, but as far as Fred and I were concerned, it was a done deal. And
Mm,
that, once that moment happened, it was transformational in my life. And
mm.
I gave him, and I remember thinking, I gave him the 10 years. I was like in my mid 30s, maybe mid 40s. I gave him like my best energy, all of my, just everything. I gave him, and not him, but the neighborhood, as we used to call it.
Yeah.
And that was worth it. I
Mm-hmm.
loved it. Now you're
Wonderful.
frozen. What's going on? There you go. Hello, there you're back. So
Yep. Sorry, we're having a few storms here in Erie. So it's been
oh, good.
snowing and raining all day. So
It's your fault, not mine. Good, good.
yeah, I take full blame for it. So now I got another question for you. You said earlier you write novels, correct?
Yeah,
Can you tell us
yeah.
about those?
I've been a writer my whole life, and I've written, I think, 13 novels now. So
Wow.
if you go to paul-lally.com, it's there. My writing. I do alternate history, World War II history. I do straight novel writing. I love to write. And I'm researching. I've done 2 trilogies. I did a novel called Ride, and that was Amazon published that, Kindle publishing. So
Nice. Nice.
I love to write. I'm still writing. I write every morning. I get up at 3 o'clock, and I'm researching right now, but getting ready to start my second novel in this trilogy. So
Wow. So, buddy, I got 2 more questions for you to make this an official Buddycast.
sure,
The first one is brought to
yeah.
us by my buddy Jonas Kane at #Positivity. He wants to know, in your own words, what does it mean to be someone's buddy?
What's it like to be what? Say that again, because it's a little breaking up. What?
What does it mean to be someone's buddy?
Someone's buddy. Well, that you have their back. That's that simple. That you're with them thick or thin. Yeah. I was in the Army. I had a lot of buddies. I was in the Army during Vietnam, and I had buddies. I lost some guys, good close friends of mine, and to be there for them. Thick or thin. That's
Mhm.
that's simple.
Mhm. The final question I have for you is what we call the ultimate Buddycast buddy question. You ready for this one?
Yeah, sure.
What is your advice to anybody who wants to do what you do and become a writer and a producer, a writer and a director?
Yeah. What's my best advice?
Mm-hmm.
Well, okay. You need to do 2 things. One, you can't help yourself. You have to do it.
Mm-hmm.
You're driven to do it. You have to feel that urge. And 2, this is the most important part. You have to think not about being it, but think about not to think of the wish, but from the wish fulfilled. You have to think from it, meaning if you want to, and I did this from whenever I started, that when I would write anything, it was as though somebody was paying me to do it, and the stakes were mortal, that I would think from it, meaning I've already won the award, I've already written the script, people like it, it's going to be terrific. You have to get to the end of it and then get toward it. Don't think up, because if you think of it, the universe will say, oh, okay, we'll keep making you think of it. But if you think from it, the universe will go, okay, it'll happen for you. And it won't happen for somebody else. Okay? That everybody has a key. If you put a key in a lock, sometimes it'll slip in, but it doesn't turn. Okay? I've taught a bunch of television production classes, meaning you dream what you want to do. But your key will fit in, and it'll turn the lock. Okay? So the secret is to make it turn is to think from the wish fulfilled, not of it. Don't think of it. That is like daydream, dude, and you could spend too much energy, drinking beer and dreaming of it instead of from it.
Mm-hmm.
Put the beer down, pick up the pen, pick up the computer, and think from it. So that's my advice to anybody who wants to work in motion pictures, television production, media production. Is, it's a fire in your belly. When I started off as a cameraman in the television studio, and when you look through a camera, you have little red lights called a tally light. It means you're on the air. It means it's live. Okay? I remember the first time I'm looking through the lens monitor, and the little red light comes on, and I realized that it was a news show or something. That the newscaster was in and I knew that if I moved the camera to the left, the newscaster moves to the left. If it moves to the right, moves to the right. And I thought I was going to faint. It was so powerful. The idea that, oh my God, I am in that situation where I am mediating this person's image. That kind of excitement. I mean, I don't know if anybody gets it, but I got it. I'm like, oh my God, I think I'm going to faint. I literally got buzzed out. And I'm like a normal guy. Okay? I'm not some freak out artist. I'm just me.
Mm-hmm.
I was so turned on. But it told me, said, man, you want this, because I can't do anything else. I've had a whole career doing this. I got paid to do it. I have little Emmys floating around. I did all this stuff, and I'm a schmuck. What else can I do? I worked at McDonald's. I worked at the post office. I dug ditches. I've done all this stuff, but all I know how to do is what I'm doing. So my advice is, if you love it, it's going to work out. And, drop me a line at paulmlally01@gmail.com. I'll do it again. paulmlally01@gmail.com. Stay in touch with me. Let me know what you're going to do.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's my tip. It's a long answer, but that's it. So
we love long answers here. Trust me.
I'm sorry. Well, blah, blah, blah. But
yeah. Don't worry about it. Well, buddy,
okay.
Thank you so much for being
My
a buddy
pleasure.
on Buddycast.
And before I sign off, I want to thank you for what you're doing, because you're utilizing the media the way it should be. I'm of the dinosaur age, with television and that kind of thing. You are active you are mediating reality in the way it needs to be mediated nowadays. So I think it's terrific. You stay at it. And if I can help you, let me know.
Will do.
You know my Gmail address already, so
yep.
You stay in touch with me too.
Will do.
And I wish those who are watching it, just to, follow their dreams, because it works. And like that guy over there, Mr. Rogers taught me that. I'll turn the camera so you can see. Where's that boy? There he is. And right above him is an Emmy award. So it all works. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So are we set? Is that enough, or anything else you'd like?
That's perfect. Stick around for a minute, though. We'll chat afterwards. But
okay.
Yeah. Right. For my buddies out there, this is my buddy, Paul Lally. Please check out his works. Check out his website. It's in the comments. I'm your host, Nick Sorensen. Be like Mr. Rogers and go be someone's buddy today. That's what I want you to promise me, Paul, before we sign off on this episode. Okay. Whatever you do today, tomorrow, next week, next month, or even next year, please go be someone's buddy. We'll catch y'all next time here on everybody's favorite show, Buddycast.
Okay.
Well, the days are going fast, buddy, we've got to make them last, buddy, before they've all gone past, buddy, tune in to Buddycast. But don't be nutty, go make it, buddy, here on Buddycast.